All right, let's move on and finish things off at the tight end position. We got one guy I'm intrigued to hear the slant on, and one guy I don't even need to hear the pitch because I've memorized it. I invented it.
We've already been through this, so it'll be rehashing old wounds here. Why don't I get that out of the way fast, because I can't wait to hear Mike's take. You guys have already heard me talk about how I think Kyle Pitts is the most overpriced player in all of fantasy. Barely can get on the field. This freak, this Calvin Johnson of tight ends, can't even get a 50% snap share from his coach. If he's that good, yes, I get Arthur Smith. It is, you got to assume rational coaching, and he just isn't. But is Pitts that good if he can't command that out of his coach? I'm not sure. Fourth in air yards, sure. First in unrealized air yards, yeah. Is Desmond Ridder the guy that's going to suddenly rope it all over the place accurately? I don't think so. He was the tight end 22 last year, yet is going as a top 8 guy in similar price ranges to George Kittle and to Darren Waller. At this point, those two have started to separate a little bit from Pitts, which thank God they have, because there was a lot of drafts earlier this offseason that Pitts was going ahead of them, and it just absolutely blew my mind. He had all of 2 top 12 games last season at tight end, and it is not hard to have a top 12 game at tight end. You had to average around 8 points to finish in the top 12 any given week. He was averaging around 3 points most weeks. It was hideous. It was atrocious. The usage wasn't there. The play from him wasn't there. And I don't necessarily see why that would flip this year, because Desmond Ridder, that's going to be our savior. Drake London and him have a great rapport. I think London will do just fine with Ridder. Bijan Robinson's now here. You've got to imagine that's going to command 300-ish touches. Tyler Algier himself was very solid last year. I don't think he'll just disappear. So to me, I think you made this point last time, Mike, where there's 3 guys right now going in the top 70 picks from the Falcons offense. Someone's going to have to bust. And to me, Pitts is far and away the clearest example of who's going to bust here. I will not touch him with a 10-foot pole. Maybe next year if they get like the number 1 quarterback because they suck and Caleb Williams is there. When they finally have a quarterback I can buy into, maybe I would even waver to Kyle Pitts, but I do not want to touch this guy at all.
If you give me a list of 3 guys and one of them's Kyle Pitts, and you say one of these guys is going to bust, I don't even need to see who the other 2 guys are. I already know who it's like showing me your cards if we're playing poker. Anyway.
I made the argument for Pitts last week. Like, you can't really argue like back about the bust take. Like, it's just my philosophy. It's just like I mentioned it the last show. I just like to swing for the fences, and he's the last fence swing guy at the tight end position, in my opinion. So, but yeah, it's been
swinging at Pitts for the fences is like when they throw the ball outside to intentionally walk you, and you just hack and miss, and the bat goes flying into the fucking crowd. Like that is, I get swinging for the fences. I am an upside chaser through and through. I fully embrace your philosophy, Mike. But why not take a round earlier on Waller? A round earlier? Let's go to your bust. Swing for the fences, George Kittle. Why not swing for him? Why swing for Kyle Pitts? Let's hear this.
So, George Kittle, in my opinion, is the most scary tight end off the boards. Going at the 49th overall pick, tight end 4 off the boards. I think anyone who follows fantasy football closely could kind of see what the argument here is. I mean, it's just what the offensive situation in San Francisco. You're dealing with not only Kittle, but then you've got Brandon Ayuk, who a lot of people think will take a step forward this year. I mean, he spent a lot of the year last year in the Kyle Shanahan doghouse, wasn't seeing the field as much as he should have been, not getting used as much. So with him potentially taking a step forward, and then Debo and CMC both established as some of the most dynamic players in the NFL, it's just how much work can he get? And last year he saw across the full season a 19.8% target share, so nearly 20%. We'll just call it 20 to round it off. But when all 4 of those guys were on the field, that took a pretty significant hit, all the way down to 13.7% target share. So that's just in and of itself kind of scary. I mean, if he's only getting 13.7% target share, I don't really see how he's going to have a lot of big plays, and we all know that he's capable of pulling off those big plays. But if he's going to be seeing that reduced role within this offense, it's kind of scary to me. And then the other point with Kittle is that I think his season is kind of, or his price and both of his performance last year and his price are being kind of propped up by this surge that he had at the end of the year last year. Early on in the year, tight end 7 in points per game through week 10. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the tight end 3 that he finished as last year versus the tight end 7, it's a pretty big drop off considering that there's only a handful of good, like really difference making tight ends each year in fantasy football. But towards the end of the season, in weeks 11 through 18, a lot of those with Brock Purdy, 15.9 fantasy points per game, tight end 2. But a lot of this came from the fact that he had 9 touchdowns in 8 games. And before this, he had never had more than 6 touchdowns in an entire season, let alone an 8-game span. So over a touchdown a game nobody's going to disagree with me saying he's not going for 17 plus touchdowns this year. It's just not happening. He's not doing a touchdown a game. But I think that these touchdowns led to huge performances down the stretch. And we know that the fantasy community can be a victim of recency bias. And I really think that's what's happening here. I don't think people are seeing the whole picture of other weapons within this offense and potentially Ayuk developing a bigger role and just taking away from Kittle's workload as a whole. And then that TD streak to close out the season and have a respectable fantasy performance. I just think that that's all blending together for me to be absolutely terrified of taking Kittle at his price.
The one thing that we got to address is why did he blow up at the end of the year? Brock Purdy took over. They had just this special bond. Kittle said it the first preseason, like the first game after, and this actually was after a game that it was his one bust with Purdy when they smashed the Tom Brady led Bucks and back in California. And Kittle, even after the game, after not having a huge game, just was raving. This is my guy. Purdy has done it from day one. He's been lighting up our defense. Our number one defense is our practice squad QB, and nobody should be surprised at how this goes. And after that point on, it just was that very special bond, and especially in the red zone. Purdy just had eyes for him, and I don't know. Yes, I know he won't score the 24 touchdowns that he was on pace for, but I think 9 to 15 or so are very, very well within his range. And as the pick 65, tight end 5'6", for a guy that hasn't finished outside the top 3 tight ends for 5 straight seasons and now has the quarterback that's used him the best, I agree. Why hadn't he scored more touchdowns? I think we talked about this last time. For whatever reason, this anomaly feels like more believable to me that Kittle should be scoring a lot of touchdowns. He's a 6'5" athletic monster that has a big catch radius that can just blow people off the ball and then zip out in a route. You think he's blocking and suddenly he's open. I don't understand why he didn't have more touchdowns, but the fact that him and Purdy had that rapport, I totally get that stat about when all 4 of them were on the field, he only had a 13% target share. That does make me nervous. I would wonder, I hadn't seen that stat, and I would wonder, was Purdy the quarterback then? Because I'm trying to think, that might have been in the early Jimmy Garoppolo, right after CMC got traded there. I can't remember who was the quarterback for those. That would be my big question here. Because if it was Purdy, that would give me a little pause. But even still, at the same you're drafting the guy right around Kyle Pitts. One guy has done it routinely, year in and year out, top 3 tight end with a similar ceiling if Pitts, everything hits for him. But there's also a way scarier floor with Kyle Pitts, which we just saw and endured last year. So to me, if they're going around the same range, it's a no-brainer. The only reason against Kittle to me is if you'd rather go Waller because you feel like he's going to actually be a bona fide wide receiver 1. I could buy that because they do go at similar prices. I don't know. I don't see it at all. I think Kittle is a phenomenal pick, and him and Purdy are just going to pick up similarly to where they left off. I'm all in.
2 things. First of all, yeah, if you get any of Kyle Pitts, you are going to get to know the floor real well. Like you're going to know every nook and cranny and dust bunny and cracking the house that's on that floor. You're going to know it's going to be your best friend. Second thing is that I feel like this is an important distinction that we should clear up. And if I misheard one or both of you, please correct me. But I feel like you may be arguing from a different draft point, because I heard MOH say Kittle's going around like pick 49, first pick in the 5th round, which is in fact the exact pick that he went in the RSJ mock draft. And I just heard the Wolf, I feel like, say pick 65. Well, that's a significant difference if you guys are arguing those points. I mean, because maybe at pick 49 you wouldn't love him as much, Wolf. So where are you guys? Am I wrong about quoting you guys on those picks?
I've got it pulled up right here in front of me. ESPN full PPR 45th overall, sleeper 44th.
Okay, so Wolf, you said 65, and I think MOH might agree that he might be a great steal at 65.
Yeah, I would, but yeah, that's almost 2 rounds later. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the I'm going off the best ball, which we know is definitely
okay.
not representative of home leagues. In Yahoo, though, I think he was going around 55 to 60. I don't have that ADP right in front of me. I think on the Fantasy Pros ADP, he was around 50 to 55 range. Even then, though, I mean, we're talking about that range where receivers are still going to be about the same around later. To me, the argument against Kittle would really be he's around the same price as Waller. And honestly, I bumped Waller ahead of Kittle. I get that. I think Waller does have the more pass to being the clear-cut guy, whereas Kittle is going to always have to contend with these other mouths. But even in contending with them, I just buy him and Brock Purdy's rapport. I do not think that was fake. I think the fact that it happened not just 1 week, it wasn't just a 3-touchdown bonanza. It was week in and week out. And even in the playoffs, when the other guys got back, they still were connecting quite often in that Cowboys game. I think this connection is real, and the only argument against him would I love getting a tight end in that pick 50 range. If you didn't want to go Kittle and you wanted to go Waller instead, fine, but just don't go fucking Kyle Pitts. That's all. I'm imploring you to not go Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, just about every format, Kittle and Waller are going within 5-6 picks of each other. I'm taking Waller every single day there.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
And me too. Honestly, I'll agree with you there. I'll give you that. I'm just saying if Waller's gone, I still think Kittle is a phenomenal pick in that 4th to mid-5th range. I love getting tight end there. I think that's a huge drop-off. Once Waller's gone, there's like Goddard, who's like a nice tight end, but he doesn't have that I can be the number 2 tight end in fantasy this year. I think Waller and Kittle both have ceiling narratives where they could hit that. And once those 2 guys are gone, I'm just punting the position. I don't even want to think about it anymore. So I really just like targeting tight end there, whichever one it ends up being. I think that's a really, really good spot to look for your guy. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.